Hey guys, week 1, day 4. This reading passage is entitled Buzz Off by Kirsten Wire, and it goes from pages 118 to 127. Can bioengineering mosquitoes stop the spread of tropical diseases? It's a bright and sunny day in the Caribbean. You roll out your beach towel, settle down in the sand, when drat, a mosquito interrupts the serenity. You reach over, you swat it. If you happen to be on the island of Grand Cayman not long ago, you needn't have bothered. In a test on the island, scientists released millions of lab-created mosquitoes. The insects were engineered to self-destruct. No need for swatters. Although a tropical vacation without biting bugs sounds like a true paradise, there's a bigger goal at stake. Mosquitoes transmit dengue fever, a devastating and sometimes fatal disease. No vaccine or cure for it exists. Could tailor-made mosquitoes be the answer? No-fly zone. Dengue fever strikes about 100 million people each year in tropical and subtropical regions. It's also called breakbone fever for the joint and muscle aches and the intense headaches that it causes. In some cases, the fever worsens into dengue hemorrhagic fever, which leads to internal bleeding, organ damage, and possibly death. Dengue fever is caused by a virus, which the mosquito, Aedes aegypti, spreads through its bite. Until now, the best way to control the disease has been to prevent contact between mosquitoes and humans, says Anthony James, a molecular biologist at the University of California, Irvine. One way to do that is to put up window screens. Another is to douse people and places with insecticides, chemicals that kill insects. Unfortunately, insecticides can harm other organisms, including beneficial insects, and mosquitoes can develop a resistance to them over time. James believes there's a better option, genetically engineering the A. aegypti mosquito. Genetic engineering is the process of manipulating an organism's deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. James tweaked A. aegypti by adding some extra genes to its DNA. Genes are short DNA segments that are responsible for individual traits in an organism. The genes that James added present flight muscles from forming in female mosquitoes. Only the adult females feed on blood and therefore are responsible for transmitting diseases, he says. Unable to fly, the engineered females can't mate, bite, or spread dengue fever. In order to get flightless females, James actually engineered male skeeters instead. The transgenic or genetically engineered males mate with females and pass on the extra genes to their offspring. Any female mosquitoes born to those fathers are unable to fly and therefore unable to mate. As the genes spread, the population dwindles. The idea is to get a zero population, James says. So far, James has tested his mosquitoes in the lab and in large outdoor mesh cages in Mexico. He's now working on securing approval to test the engineering mosquitoes in the wild. Meanwhile, Oxitec, a British company James has collaborated with, has marched ahead and released engineering mosquitoes into nature. Into the wild. The Oxitec mosquitoes are engineered in a slightly different way from those James designed. The males are unable to produce healthy offspring. In 2009, the company released a batch of those males into a small area of Grand Cayman. Wild females mated with the engineered males, and their offspring died before they reached adulthood. Within 3 months, the mosquito population in the area fell by 80%. Despite the success of the first experiment, it may be a while before transgenic mosquitoes are released on a bigger scale. The next step, James says, is to prove that the dip in a mosquito population actually reduces the number of dengue fever cases. An even bigger problem may be dealing with critics who are wary of releasing transgenic organisms into the environment. Oxitec reportedly chose Grand Cayman for the experiment because of weak regulations there. Most other countries, including Mexico, where James works, have stricter policies about releasing transgenic organisms. Genetic engineering has been going on for years. In fact, much of today's packaged food contains genetically engineered corn or soy. Still, many people are suspicious of genetic engineering. The environmental organization Greenpeace, for instance, likens transgenic organisms to a giant genetic experiment that could have unforeseen consequences for the environment and for human health. James is sensitive to the criticism, but he says, "We don't think there are risks. For one thing, the engineered mosquitoes won't persist in the environment indefinitely. After all, they're designed to die. And in most of the world, A. aegypti is a non-native species, he adds. Getting rid of the buzzing pests would actually return those habitats to a more natural state. If the experiment is a success, dengue fever may be just the start. Mosquitoes can transmit a number of diseases," James says. "The most devastating is malaria, which kills close to 1 million people every year. Unlike dengue fever, which is spread by just one mosquito species, more than 30 species can transmit the malaria parasite. That makes it a trickier target for genetic engineering. But James contends the goal is within reach." "We develop vaccines and medications, but for some diseases we have no tools," he says. "It's important that we look at all the science available to find something that will actually work." All right, down below there's a little, it's called the fever chart. It's this little chart right here. It's on page 121. Dengue fever is a viral disease that affects about 100 million people a year. The virus is transmitted to humans via the bites of female aegypti mosquitoes. The mosquitoes, in turn, acquire the virus from feeding on the blood of infected people. Mortality. Further infections by different strains of the virus can lead to dengue hemorrhagic fever, potentially lethal complication. Okay, and there it gives you 2.5 cases are fatal, 1% are fatal if treated immediately, and 20% are fatal if left untreated. Transmission zones. Dengue fever occurs in tropical and subtropical countries, predominantly in urban and semi-urban areas. So there it kind of gives you an idea, all of those countries that are dark, those are the countries that you're going to find the mosquitoes that have the dengue fever. About 2.5 million people are potentially at risk. Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific are the most seriously affected areas. So that's going to be over like the area underneath like Russia in there where that little triangle showing you. All right, probably need that for our questions, so stay tuned.